Welcome to Up on Game presents Taylor Scouting. Coach Randy Taylor is bringing his 40-plus years of knowledge to you. This is Taylor Scouting. And now, here's Coach Randy Taylor.
Hey, folks, welcome back to LeVar Arrington's Up on Game Network's Taylor Scouting Podcast. That is a mouthful. They call me Coach Taylor, and we're back to educate, stimulate, and provocate. I'm not sure that's a word, but I like how it sounds in that it rhymes, right? So today's guest is a great friend and a longtime coach for the University of Oregon, the NFL, UCLA, where I met him, and others. He's currently the guru, color commentator for the Pac-12 Network's college football TV broadcasts. It's my great pleasure to introduce my very good friend, Nick Aliotti. How are you, Nick?
I'm outstanding, Randy. Thanks for having me. And it's my pleasure. And as I always try to tell you, make sure you give hugs to that wife. Christine is awesome.
She is. I will do that in a little bit. How's Kathy and the family doing?
We're doing great. We're growing. We got 3 grandkids now. My son Michael has 3 grandkids and keeps us busy. In fact, this is Wednesday. And every Wednesday night or every Wednesday, Kath goes to the school and helps teach. And then we pick them up and have them for dinner. And it's a common occurrence every Wednesday night. We have the 3 grandkids.
Very cool. Sounds like fun. And I know you're living the dream. You're a family guy. Hey, Coach, let's start the show by getting your take on your outstanding career while you're still constructing it. So in my mind, you and that staff with Rich Brooks, right, turned the Ducks into what we now know as a Pac-12 and national powerhouse. Was there a reason for the turnaround? What did you and the administration learn from that experience? How did you guys get that done?
Well, that's a great question. I think the fact that they stuck with Rich Brooks, there's not, in today's world, this would never happen. That was, I think, Rich, I may be off a year or two. That was Rich's 18th season. And we'd only had, and I wasn't there the whole time, but they'd only had maybe 2 or 3, 6-5, 7-4 seasons. And in most worlds, they're not going to keep that guy around. But they, I guess, understood that Rich was a great football coach. And I think I have to attribute it mostly to the group of young men we had on that team that year. We started off 1-2. We were 1-2 in non-league. I believe we were picked last in the conference. And Iowa came to town. They had been to a Rose Bowl the year before, or maybe 2 years before. It's hard to remember all that stuff, but Iowa came into town, and we ended up beating them like 44-18. Next week, we went down to SC, and the Coliseum won 22-7, and it just took off from there. I can go on and on about this. I don't know how much you want me to spend on this, but the bottom line is they stuck with Rich. We had a good, cohesive staff, even in tough times, which you need when it's tough. It's simple when it's going well, but we had a staff that stayed together. And really, it was the group of young men that we had on our team that kind of were self-policed. And I always think, if I go on a tangent here, I always think the teams that are self-policed, meaning that your players, I know you know what I'm talking about, your players take ownership, and they're the ones that get on the other players harder than the coaches, then you really have something special, and that's what we had.
Yeah, you got that right. Then from there came Coach Bellotti, and now Dan Lanning. It's quite a run of success that Oregon has had, and I've seen things from outside. How important is the brand of Nike and the cool uniforms and all that stuff that keeps evolving? How has that made a difference?
Oh, yes, a ton. But the thing that we're most proud of is it's kind of like the chicken and the egg. We didn't have any of that when Rich was there. When we went to that first Rose Bowl, won the conference in '94, and went to play Penn State in the Rose Bowl, none of this existed. None of these facilities, our practice field, we had to walk across the street. There was more parking lot than facilities. And after that Rose Bowl appearance and then the Cotton Bowl the following year, Phil Knight jumped in with both feet, and Nike was all in, and they helped us tremendously. First with the branding, first with the Nike brand and the uniforms. That was the first thing that took rage. But then we just kept on winning with Mike, and then with Chip Kelly, and it just took off from there.
And I being at UCLA, I've witnessed a lot of the changes in that facilities, and you could tell there was a real commitment to winning in the way that place changed every time we came up there. One thing hasn't changed is the layout of the stadium itself, and how close they are to the bleachers or to the field is an unbelievable benefit to the Ducks. How do you feel about that? Is that kind of your thought?
Well, there's a lot of loud stadiums, but Autzen Stadium, when it is packed and it is rocking, and most of the time it's as loud as any stadium in the country. And it certainly helps your football team. And certainly when you're on defense, particularly in a tight game or long yardage situation. I remember Lloyd Carr coming in from Michigan when he was the head coach there, and we played Michigan at home, and we beat them in a really tough game. He said, Autzen Stadium is where teams go to die. It's the loudest stadium he's ever been in.
What's funny is they talk a lot about the hunting, the duck hunting and all the stuff that's up there. And I was told that the guys would grab their guns out of their gun rack from the pickup and bring it into the stadium. But now I never saw guns in the stadium. But can you verify that?
Well, I'm up in the booth. I don't think they'd let guns in the stadium. I've never seen a gun in the stadium. And in today's world, there is no way there's going to be guns in the stadium.
There might be some dead ducks, but no guns.
There are duck calls. There
are
people with duck calls and people in camo, like they're going to go duck hunting. But, no guns, Randy, no guns.
Hey, Coach, let's talk about this whole college football thing and the realignment of the major programs in this country. It's kind of a shocker to us old guys who have been around this and seeing all this. There really isn't a big or Pac-12 anymore. It's kind of like the Pac-2. And so it's kind of a weird thing. Is it safe to say that this is about money and TV revenue that made all these changes?
Yeah, I'm going to say something that probably I can get in trouble for a little bit, but the bottom line is I don't want to hear about we're doing this for the student athletes anymore. It's all a crock. It's all BS. It's all about money and TV, and that's what's caused all this realignment and people moving on from the Pac-12. I got into this league when it was the Pac-8. I spent 5 decades, not continuously, but I coached in this league for 5 different decades, and I'm really proud of that. And I grew up on the West Coast, and I grew up watching the Rose Bowl, and I grew up watching all these great teams, and then we added some teams. Money and TV has changed everything, and prior to that, you don't even get me started because I'm an old dinosaur. NIL, transfer portal. I think there were better ways to handle both of those situations, and not have the present situation that we have now, because it's like out of control. It's the wild, wild west. But the realignment, NIL, transfer portal, it all needs to, we need to pull the reins in on this. And it already might be too late, but I don't like it at all.
What's going to happen to Washington State and Oregon State? I've read a little bit about them going to another league, but is it a 2-team league now? What do you think is going to happen? And I don't know about the Olympic sports, because that's a little bit different animal if they stay Pac-12. I mean, all of that stuff's confusing.
I wish I knew for sure. I know that I think they're good for a year of being the Pac-2, and I try to read and garner as much information as I can from every resource I can, and I work for Pac-12 networks, and they don't even know. But the bottom line, if you were asking what I think is going to happen, It might be more of an independent type league next year. That being Washington State and Oregon State get their 12 games as best they can. But I really believe that those two schools, Oregon State and Washington State, are trying to get the Mountain West to come over to the Pac-12, so to speak, and keep the Pac-12 brand and start a league that way. That's what I think's they're trying to get to happen, but really nobody knows at this point, but that's what they're working towards.
Is there, when you say independent, is it like they'll be like a Notre Dame type of a organization where they're get the games, they don't get automatic berths to the CFP, but they do get invited to bowl games based on their wins and losses?
Well, this is all my surmise, Randy. I don't know for sure, but basically what I'm reading is they don't have a schedule for next year. These two schools, because the Pac-12 is dissolved, so to speak, Pac-2 is now the league. They just need to get some games, and how they're going to do that. Obviously, they're going to have to find a bunch of opening dates and make it happen. But I really don't know, which I'm sure that's not the best thing you want on your podcast, but I don't know for sure what they're going to do. It's everybody's guess as far as what's going to happen from going forward.
Well, like these schools set their schedules sometimes 5 years in advance, so there's probably not a lot of teams that they can get on their schedule. So it really is disappointing for those schools. Do you see the CFP, kind of the college football playoffs, taken over for the NCAA in a lot of ways?
I could see, because of NIL and the transfer portal, at some point, something's got to give. All these schools can't afford, with this collective, to be given all this money, paying all these student athletes that are presently there, and then paying the student athletes that they're trying to recruit. It's unsustainable in my mind. So it eventually, I guess what I'm trying to say, the best way I can answer your question is, eventually there's going to be the haves and the have-nots.
Now, do you see the end of other conferences? I mean, especially because now you got to throw in all of the Olympic sports. How do they give NIL and all that to the women's soccer team or the men's hockey team or the whoever the heck they might be? How does that, where do they get all that money?
Well, I don't know. I mean, all I know is this, that the deal that the Pac-12 made with various schools going to different conferences because they didn't like the Apple deal, to my knowledge, that was presented to them. Apple's going to own ESPN someday. And I think they should have been patient, because just it doesn't make sense to me. And the money, in my opinion, Randy, the money that people think they're going to make, I don't know how it's going to really be that much money when it's all said and done that they net, because when you're flying across country and you're flying all your sports, to my understanding, across country, and you're paying for all this travel and paying the per diems and paying, for the facilities and hotels and all this stuff, when it's all said and done for every school with all these sports, there's going to be some cut in sports. And I just don't know how they're going to make it work.
We used to care about how much class these student athletes were missing because of all the travel. And now you travel 10 hours further than you used to. It's just going to cut into what these student athletes are supposed to be there for, is getting degrees and doing what they're going to do to live successfully the rest of their life, right?
Well, like I said, it doesn't make sense when I hear a president or somebody get up in front and go, this is best for our student athletes and this is a great thing for our student athletes. But tell me what's great about and I'm not picking on any school. What's great about Stanford playing in the ACC, traveling across country, as opposed to going across the street to Cal, one little flight down to LA or Arizona, one little flight up to Oregon or Washington, and the furthest they're going is Colorado or Utah. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. I know everybody's trying to survive because they have to fund their programs, but it isn't about the student athletes anymore. It's about money and TV.
In your crystal ball, Coach, this will be the finale for you to just tell us where we're going to be. Your prediction, where are we going to be in a couple of years? And we're not going to hold you to it.
Well, I think, like I said earlier, unless somebody takes hold of the reins and puts a cap on NIL and when you could transfer, those kinds of things, starting with those two. When I say a cap, some kind of equitable thing for all the students instead of player A getting this and player B getting 1/1,000,000th of that. Until we do that, what I think is going to happen is there's going to be a super power league. And I fear for the minor sports, so to speak. And I fear for Title IX because I just don't know how they're going to sustain that. Now, so my crystal ball says something's going to give and they're either going to change it or there's going to be a super league. And to be honest with you, I think there's going to be a super league.
Yeah, I think you're right, buddy. Well, hey, I appreciate your insight. You're a great friend. I'm going to wrap up our podcast with Nick Aliotti, the guru, in my opinion, a great defensive coordinator, great football coach, and a great person. And so I'm going to wrap this up. See you guys. Thanks for joining Taylor Scouting on the Up On Game Network. Don't forget to watch us every week at 9 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube at Up On Game Presents Taylor Scouting. Also, find us on podcasts at iHeartRadio and Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts down the road. Rate and review us and subscribe to Up On Game Network for a lot of great content, just like Nick Aliotti. Thanks, brother.
Thank you, Randy. Have a good day.